Okay, I'm gonna try and keep this short because I was meant to upload this video several days back. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Lucio from the Arcana and how the nature of the genre of game he's in completely undermines not only his character, his narrative potential, but also the trauma of every single other character that surrounds him. So, I personally don't really like Lucio. In general, like even if it comes down to his personality, regardless of lore or what he's done, his actions, I do not get the appeal of this man. But apparently it is appealing. Well, there are people who do enjoy this sort of like bratty, entitled man-child sort of character because he does have fans, which is fine, but I'm not here to criticize that. That's like a perfectly acceptable character archetype that exists within a lot of different kinds of media, but it's everything that surrounds him that I find are really bad. So what am I talking about? Lucio within the game is just an abuser. He is an abuser, he's a bully, he's a colonizer, and these are things that very, very heavily impacted a lot of the other characters who have severe trauma from Lucio, his actions, his entitlement. But the game doesn't really take them seriously. That's like a half-truth. They obviously, these are things that show up and have like deep character moments that you help these characters through within their own individual routes. You get to help them go through their trauma and get better. But when it comes to Lucio's own route, you never ever have to reckon with the gravity of the trauma that he has caused. So, obviously that's a lot of words, and if you haven't played the game or don't even know what it's about, you're probably really confused. So I'm going to just vary as fast as I can, but there's so much. Basically, talk about all of the terrible things he's done, and then how that gets completely undermined by various elements of the game. So it goes all the way back into his backstory. And one thing that I will comment on that also frustrates me is the complete lack of nuance within his backstory. His backstory does not add any complexity to his character, but it just doubles down on him being a terrible, horrible, entitled person, which is also like, it's technically fine, but again, it is completely undermined within like the nature of the story. So okay, getting into it. As a young adult living in a sort of warrior tribe and the son of the leaders, of course, him being very entitled, he wants that power, he wants to lead, for no other reason than because he feels like he deserves it. Obviously, his mom doesn't approve because she knows that he's spoiled and incapable and entitled. She's not going to give that to him. So rather than actually trying to get better in any way, shape, or form, or to confront his mom, or to prove them wrong, or anything like that, he goes off and strikes a deal with a demon. Basically, to have an easy way out, to just sweep his parents under a rug and then claim the power, no work whatsoever, done. Anyway, this gives him this sort of ability to spread a plague. And at this point, it is focused onto his parents because those are the people he wants to kill. His father succumbs, but his mother doesn't, because that's just how badass she is. And that freaks him out because he made that bargain specifically so that he didn't have to fight them. It was supposed to be an easy way out. So what does he do? He runs away. Obviously, this upsets the demon because the bargain was for him to kill both parents, but he only got one, and now he's run away. So he can't complete the bargain. The plague follows him. So from his very entitlement, he has endangered who knows how many people from exposure to that plague. Already, like within the town that the main game takes place in, the one that he was currently ruling in, we felt the consequences of the plague. They were just recovering from it. It affected us directly as the player character even, because spoiler alert, we died of the plague and came back because magic, but don't worry about that. Anyway, the plague thing would be fine if, I don't know, he was a nomad and traveled alone, except he wasn't. He was a colonizer. He went on conquest specifically thanks to his magical illness spreading powers, where basically anyone he attacked would be weakened by the illness he brought. So he would go on colonizing places. He didn't even bother to learn the names of the places he conquered. So that's shit. Anyway, now moving forward to right before where we find him, things that lead into the events of the main game, and basically where he basically traumatizes every single one of the characters that we know. Okay, so obviously with him being a warmonger, he gets into a little bit of an accident and has his arm amputated. And well, I guess that guy just could not deal with having a stump, so he wanted to get a prosthetic, but not just any prosthetic, no. He needs to have the coolest, magical, metal prosthetic that is also super powered, because God forbid, God forbid you lose an arm and then not immediately try to compensate for it, right? Anyway, in order to do this, he imprisons two magicians, parents of one of the main characters, forces them to build him an arm, and then keeps them imprisoned, where their only way out from basically rotting in a cell for the rest of their life was to enter a sort of pocket dimension, wherein they would also remain stuck, but at least they wouldn't be rotting and mistreated, right? Anyway, parents, you want to know how old their kid was when they were basically kidnapped? Like 5, 8, barely. A child, a baby. That kid was orphaned. Their parents were alive the whole time. They would have loved to go back to him. They would have loved to raise him, but they just couldn't because Lucio was selfish. And then another character, the child, so Azra, basically. Azra's best friend, Muriel, who he befriends as an orphan child on the streets. Both of them orphans, so festive. Anyway, later on, Lucio decides to basically enslave Muriel. I believe that there was also an aspect of if Muriel didn't work under Lucio, then he would have put Azra endangered. So, coercion, that's great. At the end of the day, he was forced to fight in a coliseum for entertainment. And that Muriel is one of the most traumatized characters in the whole game. That trauma of being forced to fight defines his entire character. He believes himself to be a monster. Everyone else believes him to be a monster because he was forced to fight for Lucio's entertainment. Yeah, that's fun. Anyway, circling back to that funny little plague of his, well, eventually it catches up to him. He gets sick with the plague, and that's when he starts caring about curing it, even though he knows damn well that there is no actual real cure for it besides killing his parents, because again, it was a bargain made with a demon. He tries to get other people to find a cure for him anyway. In come Dr. Julian Deverac, who, at some point, he force feeds him a plague beetle, forcefully gives him the plague so that he would hurry up and get a cure. So he could have died in that situation. Portia, his younger sister, while is one of the characters who is the most unaffected by Lucio, still would have suffered from him indirectly because he would have killed her brother. And then we have Nadia, which is one of the most ambiguous, difficult characters to describe in relation to Lucio. Countess Nadia was Lucio's wife, and obviously this is a dating sim, and Lucio was one of the romanceable characters, so you couldn't make him abusive to his wife, because that would have lowered his appeal immensely. But you still get the sense that he did not see Nadia as an equal. He saw her more as like a prop, a decoration, a trophy wife. When you play her route, you get the sense that she is a very intelligent, bright woman, but that was completely stifled by Lucio. Even like within other routes, when you see her, she radiates grace. She is extremely intelligent and competent. But obviously Lucio still managed to run the place into the ground. So how did he do that with such a capable wife? Well, obviously, he completely stifled her. But we can't go into details of how terrible he was towards her, because again, it's a dating sim, he's a romanceable character. You can't make someone look bad in a romantic relationship when the whole deal is that you are supposed to want to date them. which is very upsetting, because that it completely undermines whatever Nadia was going through, right? We don't get to know how badly he treated her. We don't get to know what exactly happened between those two because they couldn't go so far as to make him actually abusive towards her, because that would have lessened his appeal. I would hope and think that all of the other things that he did before would lessen his appeal in general, right? But I guess that's not the case. So that's basically a summary of all the shit that Lucio has done. He is a terrible person. He's entitled. And somewhat unrelated, but I would like to point out that Lucio is obviously a white man, Caucasian. And I find it very, very troubling that he embodies all of these sort of like stereotypes of an entitled, selfish, childish white man. What bothers me even further is that most of the other characters that he has traumatized are people of color. It does not sit right with me, not even a little bit. Anyway, the thing is, all of those things are completely undermined within the game, within how they treat and write his character. And I see two causes for this. One, the nature of the Arcana as a dating sim, and two, the archetype that Lucio embodies. So the archetype thing, I'm going to go into that first. Lucio is that bratty, incompetent man-child. So in order to keep that sort of energy with him, you can't ever make him recognize what he's done as wrong. He has to stay entitled, he has to stay bratty, because that's what draws people to him, question mark. That's where the appeal is supposed to come from him, is that he's bratty. But a bratty attitude and a colonizer and abuser doesn't jive well, in my opinion. Like, you can write bratty characters, and that can be their whole shtick and their whole appeal. But don't make them abusers. Don't make their brattiness like manifest as abuse that they commit against other people. That is incredibly sick and twisted. Anyway, onto the story, like the nature of the game itself. The Arcana has a dating sim. It's supposed to be simple fantasy, escapism, romance. You're not supposed to take it seriously. There's this interesting aspect of the Arcana that it is mainly also like this huge narrative where you uncover this grand mystery. You spend more of your time uncovering that mystery than actually going after your chosen beloved, right? It's basically you're uncovering that mystery with them. You're not wasting time trying to woo them. So a lot of the Arcana is that story. And as a result, a lot of it is that trauma that Lucio has caused, because he has caused so fucking much of it. It's kind of excusable when you are playing all of the other individual routes and helping them with that trauma and stuff, where Lucio is nothing but a two-dimensional roadblock, right? He's just an obstacle for you to overcome. He is an antagonist. You're not supposed to root for him. You're not supposed to care for him in those scenarios. But then you have Lucio's route, and you still have to continue that pattern of fantasy escapism where things don't go wrong, where you get what you want, and what you want being whatever, being loved, having a significant other, being important. When you continue that trend, but with the abuser, that means that you can never have the abuser actually come to terms with the shit that he's done, actually recognize how terrible he's been, actually face the consequences of being with an abuser, right? You never lose respect for being with Lucio. People may question you, but they will never actually challenge you. They will never leave you for being with their abuser. And it's their abuser. This isn't just some ambiguously terrible person. Lucio has directly traumatized every single one of the other characters who are supposed to be your friends. So I feel like he shouldn't have had a route at all because of that. Because Lucio basically gets to walk away scot-free. Well, now that's not true. He says, "I'm sorry for all the oopsies I've done. I may have committed a little oopsies." That's what he says. That's how he considers the things that he's done. That's how he considers orphaning someone. That's what he calls enslaving someone and forcing them to fight in a tournament for all their life and traumatizing them so severely that they've built their entire personality around that trauma. That's what he calls nearly killing someone on purpose. That's what he calls ambiguously abusing his wife. Oopsies. And you're supposed to find that endearing, because he's a man-child and he has difficulty admitting his mistakes. And like, just to show like how much they didn't want to challenge Lucio, or like in any deep way. Muriel, the one that he enslaved and forced to fight in tournaments for most of his life, that scarred him so deeply that he personally considers himself a monster, that character virtually never shows up in Lucio's route. They did that because they knew that there was no way to reconcile the things that Lucio has done to Muriel, right? So yeah, in conclusion, Lucio should have never been romanceable, I don't think. It just sits wrong with me incredibly. If they wanted to go that route, either completely change his story to actually take those things seriously, actually lose friends over your decisions, okay? Or just not make him that much of a terrible person, holy shit. Anyway, thanks for watching. I am going to be opening commissions soon, but otherwise, continue donating to people in need, and have a nice day.